right. I've got the man, the myth, the legend. That is Ben Van Leeuwen of the Van Leeuwen Ice Cream fame on the podcast today. Welcome, Ben.
Thank you. Thanks for having me.
A fun origin story for how we met is we met in the same workout class. So I guess this is the first IRL meet I've had for the podcast.
Oh, that's great. I'm happy to be the first. I love
Yeah.
meeting people in the real world.
Yeah, it's like, oh, who knew? This still happens. This still
Yeah.
happens. Yeah, like this whole podcast is like online dating. It's like I email people and they get back to me.
Mhm.
It's great. But tell me, I always like to ask people to introduce themselves at the start of the podcast because I always joke that I have a penchant for botching people's introductions and not doing the guest as a real service on how successful they are. So, Ben, if you wouldn't mind, do you want to tell us a bit about yourself, who you are and how you got to where you are today?
Sure. So my name is Ben Van Leeuwen. I'm the CEO and co-founder of Van Leeuwen Ice Cream. We are an ice cream company based in Brooklyn, New York. We have two main channels. One is our own scoop shops. So we have today 56 corporate-owned scoop shops across the United States. We have franchise stores in Singapore. We plan to open another 25 shops in 2024. And we hope to be up to 400 shops in the next 3 or 4 years, all corporate owned. We also sell in grocery stores. We call that our CPG channel. So we package our ice cream flavors into 14-ounce cups, and you can buy it in Whole Foods, Sprouts, Walmart, Kroger, so grocery stores nationwide.
That's awesome. I know that a smile on your face.
And I didn't get the origin story there, but I can do that too.
Yeah, give us that's what we're here for.
So my foray into the ice cream business started in 2002 when I was a senior in high school and I was looking for a summer job, and the summer job I ended up doing was driving an ice cream truck. And I rented a Good Humor branded truck, and I bought ice cream at wholesale, products like Chipwich cookie sandwich, strawberry shortcake bar, chocolate eclair bar, SpongeBob SquarePants, sort of a character bar. And I resold those. And I did that for two or three summers, like sort of 2.5. After the second summer, I was very hardworking, super ambitious, even running that little truck on the streets of Connecticut where I grew up. And I saved like $35,000 or $40,000 the second summer I did this. When I say summer, it was like May to October. So a long summer. And I took that money or much of that money, and I traveled around the world. I went to Europe. I went to Southeast Asia. I had no plan. This was 2003, 2004. So there were no smartphones. The internet in terms of research capability was rudimentary compared to what it is now. So it was very exciting. I started in Milan and didn't really know what I was going to do, but, ended up on that 9-month trip, being really affected by, I guess, how good the food was everywhere, or I should say how accessible good food was in Southern Europe and Southeast Asia. Ended up going back to college, graduated college, again, needed a job. And I saw a Mr. Softy ice cream truck on the streets of New York City. And I, of course, had seen those in the past. But in this moment, as I was looking for a job, I needed to make a living. I had experience running ice cream trucks, and I was really into food. And I was really into this sort of ingredient stories of food. When you learn about, the origin of cheddar cheese, or what makes good balsamic vinegar different, and how it's made, and why the pistachios from Bronte, Sicily, which are an ingredient that we use, are so special. So in that moment, everything sort of subconsciously clicked for me. Yeah. And I always say it, actually, I didn't have an idea in that moment. I made a decision. So, and that's not even like that sounds kind of cheesy, but I guess the idea came, of selling really good ice cream off of a truck. But I had so much conviction in the idea in that moment that I just literally decided I'm doing that. And it's funny, I thought it was a brilliant idea, and it wasn't a brilliant idea, which is why I think it works. Ice cream works. Good ice cream works. trucks as a distribution method for ice cream work. I think the reason I thought it was a brilliant idea is because I was so motivated. I was so excited. I had so much vision to do something, right? To do something entrepreneurially that
Yeah.
I guess I kind of had to convince myself that this thing that I thought of is brilliant. It's going to be a huge success. And I went for it. At the end of the day, what we do is really simple. We take a lot of heavy cream, a lot of egg yolks, refined sugar, and very good ingredients, mix them together, whip air into them, freeze them, and scoop them. So what we're doing, which is selling ice cream, which is selling good ice cream, is something that works, right? It worked, at the start of the commercialization of ice cream, 100 years ago. And I think, if we still have a nice place to live in 100 years, it will
Yeah.
still work. But that's the reason I love this business. It's steady, it's safe, it's good for a sort of conservative operator in that way. Like our sales aren't going to, our same store sales will never double,
Yeah.
but they also like aren't going to plummet just because it's not a trend based product, right? We're
Yeah.
selling fat, sugar mixed with really good stuff. It triggers something in the brain, because those ingredients in nature are very scarce. Um, since humans were like hunter gatherers and we actually took stuff, like our brains haven't evolved that much since then to
Yeah.
understand that refined sugar and the fat centrifuged out of animal milk mixed with that, and then the yolks taken from an egg, is it those things are no longer scarce. So when we taste them, it's just like ding ding ding, what is going on, right? And our product is distinct in that we use more fat and more eggs, so more cream and more eggs than
Yeah.
any other ice cream on the market. I mean, at least any other one that I know about. And we use like quite a bit more, which is, I think, why it's so good. And sort of back to the origin story, I can get into kind of the logistics of starting the business if you like.
Well, it's funny. I just like hearing how people kind of get to that, like, sort of, what do they say in Pulp Fiction? Like that moment of clarity, where like you saw the self-serve truck and you knew that this was for you. I
Mhm.
guess, like, what was the story of even buying that self-serve truck? Did you just go up? Did you wait for the guy to come back with the keys, or did you
No, I
go
didn't. I didn't.
like,
I'm sorry. I must have like mistold that story. I didn't buy that truck. I had the idea to
oh,
start a business that was selling really high quality ice cream off of a truck. I
and so,
didn't have any money in that moment to buy a truck or
sorry,
to.
I thought that's where you were going. I was like,
Yeah,
well, okay, there's obviously a story here. Like, you hustle a guy for like
yeah.
$1,000 for his ice cream truck.
No. So now I'll tell this story because I do find that particularly when I was like a newer entrepreneur, the stories got to the end too quickly. And to me, like once you're where we are, it's still
Yeah,
challenging, but you've sort of gotten over a lot of humps. I think it's most interesting. Like, how did you start it? Right. Cause it was really
yeah,
hard. So I came up with the idea. I started writing a business plan. I planned to raise $250,000. It was really hard to raise money. Nobody believed in my idea except for
yeah,
my friends, and one of my college professors, and my parents put a very little bit in. So I raised $60,000. So little. I was blown away that people weren't lining up to invest. I really was, because A, it's ice cream, it's safe. B, like I had so much conviction. I was so excited. I was so passionate, which I still am. Um, yeah, so I just didn't get it. But we got $60,000 together, which was enough to buy a used 1988 Chevrolet step van on eBay, that I retrofitted into an ice cream truck. It wasn't enough to build our own means of production, so we outsourced all production for the first few years to a teeny little factory 6 hours northwest of the city,
yeah,
in upstate New York. And we like really, really hustled. The trucks broke down constantly. It was hard. It was horrible, but we were young and we had the energy to keep going and sort of keep making it work. But about 2 years in, we pivoted because we had the opportunity to open a scoop shop, a brick and mortar.
yeah,
And the plan was never to do that. It was just to do trucks. We thought we would have thousands of trucks across the country. selling this really good scooped ice cream. And we opened a store because it was in our neighborhood. It was like 120 square feet. It was like the smallest storefront you could
Yeah.
imagine. The bar operators who owned this little storefront paid for our build out, so we could actually afford to open. And literally within 6 hours of opening the store, we just said, wow, these stores do more revenue than trucks. They're easier to operate. And we never built another truck, and we started opening brick and mortar stores from then on.
And so I guess, yeah, like, I mean, how soon until you realized there was like a hype factor to the ice cream? Do you know what I mean? I know you said you had the truck and you were driving around, but like when you were in retail, there must have been like one of those sort of aha moments that it's like, okay, like this is a thing now.
You do. Alex. I don't. Do you mean a hype factor to like Van Leeuwen, or to artisanal ice cream in general?
No, just to Van Leeuwen. Like, I mean, there must have been a moment when you realized that, like, all right, this is something. Like, there are people
Yeah.
like lines around the block. There are people
Yeah.
talking about us online. Like,
Well,
was there a signal that you knew that, like, okay, we are very much on the right track now?
I'll tell two stories. But I want to preface it with, we were never that hyped. There was never a strategy. We said, let's
Yeah,
make a good product with really good ingredients. We truly believed that we'd never be able to afford PR. There was no corporate team, there were no MBAs, there was no calculated
yeah,
process of deciding where to park or how to tell people where we were. So in that sense, we did well right away, and we were popular, and there were lines. But compared to the stuff that's viral today, I mean, that you see like, a bagel shop with like 500 people in line selling bagels. It's just like we experienced nothing like that. And I'm actually so glad we didn't. Because the way that I want to grow the business is sort of slow. It's like an old growth tree. Like the wood is harder and stronger, but it takes a
yeah,
lot longer to grow. So I think by like consistently making a truly distinct product, the idea is you're going to get a lot of word of mouth marketing, right? Which
yeah,
is the best marketing, right? I've been to, I don't go to that many, but like, so, some, and by the way, there's some things that are viral and blowing up and they're awesome, but there's others that like you go there and you're like, it looks really cool visually, but it's
yeah,
actually not that good. So, and I'm not even saying that to knock them. I'm just saying I think it's really dangerous when you're growing a business if like your sales from year one to year two to year three are going like this. Like, how do you plan, right? How do you do that
yeah,
versus just sort of building a customer base because you're making something not that everyone wants to try once or twice, but that they're like, this is really good. I want to eat this forever. Anyways, back to the specific story. Our first day in business, we had a truck and we needed to find a place to park that truck. Um, we drove around lower Manhattan for 5 hours, and we couldn't find a place where we could park. And finally, we like found a parking place on Canal Street, and it was
okay,
middle of June in 2008. Beautiful weather, like perfect ice cream to the Friday. And we pulled up on Canal Street. For those of you listening who don't know, is a very busy pedestrian thoroughfare,
yep,
sort of between Lower Manhattan and Soho. Um, and we parked there. We were so excited. We put so much energy into this for the last year, and we were finally launching. And we had a butter yellow truck. We had a menu with botanical drawings of each ingredient. So it was a botanical drawing of the vanilla orchid and a red currant plant and cinnamon bark from a cinnamon tree, for our cinnamon ice cream. And we put our little homemade wooden counter out that my brother had made for us. And, we put our spoons, we got the spoons and cups ready because when you're driving a truck, you of course have to put all of that away when you're driving. And we were ready, and nobody came up to the truck. We were sitting there and like nobody. And like not only
yeah,
were people not coming up, like people weren't even looking, right? No, I was like, huh, what's this? Like, this is cool. And I think we sat there for like 30 minutes, then an hour, and we did not sell a single ice cream. And by the way, keep in mind, this was 16 or 17 years ago, 2000, yeah, 16 years ago. There were no fancy food trucks then. I mean,
Yeah.
food truck in New York, there weren't even really many Mexican food trucks. It was hot dog carts, it was Mr. Softy trucks, and that was it. So suddenly we start, questioning what we've done. We're like, oh my God, were we fools? Like, we have this fancy looking food truck, like, and then we were charging, I think it was $3.50 for the ice cream, which was very expensive 16 years ago.
Yeah.
Um, and nobody came, and we just thought, okay, this sucks. And it was obviously we felt very defeated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And we then said, okay, but let's try another spot. Maybe we can sell like 5 ice creams an hour if we find a decent spot. But there were so many people on Canal Street. So we pulled onto Green Street and started driving north into Soho. And there's a fire hydrant in front of the Louis Vuitton store, which meant we could park there because there were no cars parked there. So we pulled up in front of the Louis Vuitton store, and by the time we had opened the window, there was a line of like 25 people. Why, right? Why? I mean, first lesson in, location strategy for real estate. There's you figure out what works, why it works. There was more foot traffic on Canal, so why did we sell so much more ice cream on Green and Prince? Because people are in a totally different mindset when they're in
Yeah.
Soho. It's a pleasant place where you want to be and you want to hang out. Canal is just transit. You're trying to get through. But it was fascinating because it wasn't like we went to that area and sold, 20% more. It's like infinitely more, because there was absolutely no sales on Canal. So in terms of the sort of moment where like, whoa, this is hitting something, what it was hitting from a sort of the kind of like business science analysis would be,
Yeah.
we were, at the beginning of the wave of premiumization and a desire for premiumization on everything, right? Particularly
Yeah.
in food. We were premiumizing in a way that was still affordable luxury. And we actually were and are producing a truly, product that's premium to the existing super premiums, which are Ben and Jerry's and Haagen-Dazs. Good stuff, but ours is more fat, more eggs,
Yeah.
better flavor ingredients. But we were also premium in the way we branded. What we were doing then has become very generic. What we were doing then was talking about ingredients, talking about sourcing. We were doing those two things because our ingredients and sourcing was truly special. It was really
Yeah.
good. Now, I think it's just as effective if you have a product that isn't that special and you talk about where it's sourced from. The average consumer is now reading that as premium and artisanal and special. So
Yeah.
we've actually pulled back from that. We still use the pistachios from Bronte. We still get our chocolate from permaculture farms in Ecuador. We use whole bourbon and Tahitian vanilla beans that are, slowly cured
Yeah.
in the sun in Papua New Guinea. But we found that talking about it has started to sound generic because everyone from, Dunkin' Donuts to, there's McDonald's commercials.
Catapulted.
Yeah, I mean, there's McDonald's commercials that show these beautiful cows grazing on grass and these tomato farmers. You're like, oh my God, the media budgets and the production budgets that they have, we could never beat the big companies that trying to tell that story. But what we can do as a smaller company is make better products, right? So that's our thing. And I think that's the most important, over time, because no matter how good the marketing is, if the product's not distinctly good and distinctly better than what you can go buy for less, like, people aren't going to continue buying it.
Oh man, speaking my language. I mean, I think it doesn't matter if you're in retail, CPG, or you're in tech. I mean, if the product isn't that good, like the marketing can take the horse to water, but it won't make it drink.
Yeah.
And I find that, like, to use that kind of phrase, product market fit, like, if the product's really good and people want to buy it, they'll buy it, whether the marketing is there or not.
Right.
People will find a way to consume your product no matter what. And I mean, I guess more than most in terms of, like, people will, like, crawl over hot coals for certain products. You know what I mean? Like, people really want Van Leeuwen ice cream, they will go sort it, suss it out. I actually had to go find it recently.
Really?
Although it turned out it was in the Organic Planet on Driggs next to.
Sure. Yeah.
But the one I wanted wasn't in there, so I.
Which one?
Honeycomb was not there.
Oh,
I do love the honeycomb.
You can get it at our store in Williamsburg, our stores, Whole Foods. I mean, New York, we're well covered.
Yeah, you are. Exactly. But you did say something interesting there, which I thought was actually quite interesting. You were talking about like the difference between Canal Street and up in Soho, where Green Street, where the Louis Vuitton store is or was. I'm not sure if it's still there now. I presume it is. And I don't really run in that circle, so I don't know. But what I would say is, you mentioned it was like a pleasant place, and it's like capturing. I think that word pleasant is very interesting in the sense that, like, I don't want to hang a hat in it, but it's like using that word pleasant and thinking about, like, when you think about scaling into 56 locations, okay, do you look at that moment of the Louis Vuitton moment, so to speak, as your light bulb for how you think about all the properties that you place the Van Leeuwens in? Like, are they, you're very selective in terms of like the pleasant kind of ice cream consumption audience of person that is in that area?
Yeah, I mean, that was our first data point.
Yeah.
Um,
Well, yeah. I mean,
yeah,
obviously
as
you're
we
like
as we
sophisticated
open,
now.
yeah. I mean, and also where a truck does well is very different than where a brick and mortar will do well. Um, with every sort of lot of stores we open, it's not with every store, because sometimes we will open a store and it's in a very similar location in terms of attributes to what we already have. So you're not going to learn
Yeah.
as much from that. But as we open new stores in different types of areas, we learn more and more. And that sort of evolution of our understanding of what works and our ability to analyze a location, based on different attributes evolves, right? And it can only evolve rapidly if we're opening a ton of stores, right? Because you also
Yeah.
have to make mistakes to learn about what doesn't work, right? Because if you were only opening home runs, you want to be opening that many stores, right? Like, because they're
Yeah.
not all home runs. Um, but yeah, that was a big. I mean, that was the first one. I think, again, it's a numbers game, and it's a game of trying different stuff. For example, we opened a store in Grand Central Station, and it's our first transit store.
Yeah.
We didn't have a transit store, and Grand Central Station's beautiful, but you don't really go and hang out there, right? You don't like go there unless you're going somewhere else. So it's kind of like Canal Street, the way I talked. You're going through.
Yeah.
With so in that sense, you might say, you know what, it might do okay, but maybe not great. But that's a home run location. It's a really, really good store.
Yeah.
And why? I think if the foot traffic's crazy enough, you kind of can't fail, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Because there's just enough people walking by that do want ice cream. And then you want to look at foot traffic over time, of course, right? If all the foot traffic's occurring between 6 a.m. and 11 a.m., you're probably not going to sell any ice cream, but you'll sell a lot of coffee. If the foot traffic is 11 a.m. to 4 p.m., it's better. If the foot traffic is 3 p.m. to 11 p.m., that's your prime, because you're eating ice cream usually after lunch.
But you're But if you take a location in that spot, for example, does that in your head kick off thoughts to how do we evolve what we offer within the four walls themselves?
No.
Like, I hear other
Yeah.
brands now saying, like, well, Crumble is doing baked goods, for example, now. And it's like, okay, wow, they're becoming a bakery. It's like, okay, because obviously not the same kind of, just what you're saying there kind of triggered the same thought. Like, between the hours of 6 a.m. and 11 a.m., people are probably not going to buy a lot of
Yeah.
ice cream, but they buy a lot of coffee. I presume the same goes for cookies.
Yeah.
You
So
know,
so we don't do that. And there's two reasons we don't do it. One, we really like being able to focus 100% of our mind share on ice cream. Um, it's hard to quantify why that will make us do better. But just the idea that to me, also from a branding perspective, it shows a lot of confidence, saying you
yeah,
come here for ice cream. We're not making coffee anymore. We used to. We don't make pastries. We have cookies for cookie sandwiches, and that is it. You can get milkshakes
yeah,
and sundaes too, but we are good at ice cream.
yeah. Your
And
bread
if
and
we
butter.
just have ice cream to focus on, we're going to get even better. So that's kind of the more sort of high level, broad, harder to grasp reason. The other reason is ice cream shops are a really, really simple model, not just Van Leeuwen shops, but you're producing everything centrally. There's zero nothing is perishable, right?
Yeah,
The shelf life is like 1 to 2 years, and you're going through it in a day or two. So nothing is perishable. And it's extremely easy to train team members to scoop ice cream, which gives them more time to focus on guests and focus on supporting each other, and makes for a easier environment to create a great culture.
Yeah.
Bringing in new products with more complexity is going to completely change that operation. I'm not saying that's a bad idea, but that's kind of our thing.
Yeah.
Our job is to make our team's jobs in the store as easy as possible, because then they're going to have more fun. The guests are going to have more fun. So it's sort of two things. It's one, we just like the idea of just focusing on ice cream. Two, just from a tactical standpoint, it's like the complicatedness of, if we were to say, let's bring coffee back, let's also start baking off cookies and croissants in the ovens,
Yeah.
which does work with ice cream, right? But it would make it harder to scale, right? There's more training,
Yeah.
there's more equipment, there's the perishability. So those are the reasons we have not, changed our offering based on locations.
I'm
Now,
not trying to literally get a scoop here,
I will say this, from an efficiency standpoint, you've got unused real estate from
Yeah.
6 a.m. till basically like 12 or 1 p.m. every single day. So you could put coffee in there, right? I think the other thing that I didn't mention is it's hard to be more than one thing to people.
Yeah.
So we used to sell a lot of coffee, and we did a really good job on coffee in the early years. But as we sold less and less coffee, coffee is something that if you're not selling a lot, it's not going to be that good, because when you're making espresso, you have to calibrate the machine, and it takes,
Yeah.
depending on
Yeah.
how good you are, like 5 to 10 shots to calibrate. But if you're only selling like a few coffees an hour, you're not going to like spend 5 to 10 shots every 20 minutes to sell one shot. So the coffee was challenging there, and the reason we were selling less and less every year is we started selling coffee 16 years ago, and they were like, I'm going to make this number up, but there were 20 great coffee shops in New York then. Now there's probably 5,000 shops that have
Yeah.
very high quality beans, really good espresso machines, and trained baristas.
Yeah.
And why would anybody go to an ice cream shop for their coffee? For the same reason that why would they ever buy ice cream from a coffee shop if there's an ice cream specialty shop there?
Yeah, which goes back to your original point, which is the specialization, and the specialization of the commercialization of literally everything at that time in 2008. That you got in on the ice cream, and it's great to have that type of like laser focus. I mean, like you said, I mean, not many places get to 10 locations, get to 30 locations. You're at
Hmm.
56, you said, with 24 more to come. And in fairness to you, like your locations, your geo of those is quite spread out. Like I've had people on this pod that have like say similar number of locations, but they might all be clustered in say Northern California
Mm-hmm.
and like say only California up to say Oregon. So they're in that kind of like kind of channel of geography that they don't have to go that far. Like Arizona has to jump too far for people from California.
Yeah.
Yours are kind of spread out. I mean, you're in Colorado, you're in Texas, you're in California, and then you've got a huge kind of Northeast corridor kind of line here as well. I mean, it's pretty. I mean, to run that operation, I mean, you must be on the go constantly, like checking in on this. Or how do you think about the kind of scaling challenge that you face there?
It's more efficient to have your shops condensed geographically, because there's supply chain
Yeah,
efficiencies, you know, meaning you will spend less to move product around. There's operational efficiencies. Your management team can much more easily get between New York, Boston, and Washington, D.C. than New York and LA and Texas. Um, and there's also brand awareness transfer efficiencies. Brand awareness transfer is going to be much more profound from New York to DC or New York to Boston than New York to LA, even though you might think, New York and LA, they're so connected. But I think that's, only at the highest level are there people, going, not the highest level, but it's a certain class of people that are constantly
yeah,
going back, and where most people stay where they live, and they spend, most of the time there. Um, so why are we scattered all over? Why did we do it that way? One, I think we went, LA was our first new market. And we opened in LA over 10 years ago. And we weren't as experienced. Part of it was young. We were young. We lived in Brooklyn, and LA was really cool. Silver Lake was cool.
Yeah, Silver Lake. Yeah,
Franklin Village, Hollywood Hills was cool. And we said, these areas kind of feel like New York. We'll probably do really well there. And we did okay there. We do really well in LA. But it's 3,000 miles away. And then we went to Texas. And by the way, none of these are mistakes. We do
yeah, yeah,
well in these places. But if you would theoretically would be more profitable if we had just done New York, then Boston, then DC, then what fit Philly as well in there, and then down to the Carolinas. But we did Texas because of data, data analytics saying we think Houston will be the best market for Van Leeuwen in the country. And it wasn't. It's a good market, but
yeah,
Washington D.C., which was ranked, I think, 17 out of 40, and Houston was ranked number one, does much, much, much better revenues in Houston because there's people walking around.
yeah,
So I think the mistake, if you call it a mistake, and again, I'm very happy we're in Texas, but we should have done DC first. The mistake was we actually trusted the data over just our intuition, which would have been driven by the experience.
yeah,
And the experience is, it's easier to sell a lot of ice cream where there's a lot of people walking around in a pleasant place where they want to hang out. Southern California, well, all of California, all of Texas, they are vehicular markets.
yeah,
So there's very few areas where people are walking around other than
yeah,
what they call malls, which are now called lifestyle centers. So those for us outside of New York tend to be the places where we are able to,
yeah.
serve a lot of guests.
Interesting. And I think about like like because you're saying like only like say the most senior people will be traveling these kinds of distances now, but at the same time, I mean, you
Not the
have to.
most senior, but I guess I meant like it's more that like most people, particularly people with families, like
Yeah,
not like going from LA to New York for a weekend to party with your friends. It's like it's like maybe a certain class and then just a younger generation who's not
yeah.
done. Like most people hang out where they live,
But I mean, in the sense of like exporting the culture, like your culture, because
Yeah.
you are like it comes from you. You know what I mean? Like the Van Leeuwen, I know you got a co-founder, but like in the sense that like your name's on the wall. You know what I mean? So like in one sense, like when you walk in the room, people are like making sure that like they're like, oh, there's Ben Van Leeuwen. You know what I mean? So it's like, how do you like go about exporting your vision for the culture across all the stores? Do you know what I mean? Because you are
I
in
mean, yeah.
so many different locations. You know what I mean? It's like, so there's a lot riding on you, is there, and the people that you hire to kind of run these sort of
Yeah.
regions or to run the stores themselves.
Yeah. I mean, well, step one is defining the mission and vision, right? What is our mission and vision? We used to think when we were smaller, it was as simple as we make good ice cream and let's just be really nice and not be jerks. And that kind of works. It gets you so far. But as the organization grows, you have to sort of figure out who you really are, what you're really trying to do. So our mission and vision remain the same, but defining it, so now our mission is, let's see, I've got some of the things here. A life without anything good is bad. But our mission is to make good ice cream to make good ice cream for everybody that makes you feel good. Um, and so if you take that mission, right, what does that mean? Good ice cream. What's good ice cream? Good ice cream to us is a lot of cream, a lot of eggs, really good base with no unnecessary stuff, and then finding awesome flavor ingredients. And then what makes you feel good? I think to me, and this is how I got into the business, when I eat food that's made with care, right, in terms of how it's produced, in terms of the sourcing, you can tell. I mean, of course, it tastes good, but I think you can tell in even like deeper, more
Yeah.
soulful way. You just feel good after eating it. Even if it's unhealthy, even if it's a fried food or dessert, if it's really yummy, you'll be like, wow, I'm like happy right now. Versus I like never eat fast food because I don't like it, but sometimes I'm on like a road trip and all there is McDonald's, and I'm not trying to knock McDonald's, but like I actually don't like it. Like I don't think it's good. And I'll eat it. I'm just like so truly deeply unsatisfied.
Yeah.
And I don't mean this in a snobby way. Like I mean, because it's not even that cheap anymore. Like, I'd rather go to like a hole in the wall Mexican place. It's going to be so much better where the food's made with some care and passion. Um, so it's defining the culture. But how do you sort of do that? How do so you write it down, you say, this is our mission, this is our vision, these are our values. And it's team, right?
Yeah.
You need to build a really, really good team and have enough sort of depth in that team that they can spend time in these markets, and they can pass this culture and transfer this culture on to area managers, general managers. And it's, so it's building the team, it's hiring people who I think share those values, which I think the simplest thing is like, you want sharp people, of course, you want
Yeah.
hardworking people, but for us, like, you want nice people, you just want like really nice people with good vibes. Cause in our business, like, it's tough, right? Food, restaurants, whether it's ice cream or anything else, like the margins are, fairly thin. It's not an, you're not going to make the money you would make in finance. So it better be really freaking nice. It
Yeah.
better be a really happy place. And it's, it's just, we like to say sometimes, like, it's just ice cream. Like, yes, we're going to get stressed about stuff, but we have to remember we are trying to serve people ice cream and make their days even better. So the idea that we'd ever be like freaking out and upset with each other, we're like,
Yeah.
guys, remember what the mission is. Remember what the mission is. Like, we need to be good to everyone, each other, our guests, of course, our wholesale partners, our
Yeah.
vendors who, sell us chocolate and pistachios. So it's like, and as I'm saying all of this, it's of course hard to execute that. We have, a corporate team of almost 70 people. We have, by this summer, we'll have 2,000 team members working in the stores, at the peak of the summer season.
Yeah.
So no, is everybody going to hit on that? No, but a lot are, and it really comes from like the building a team and making sure that team. And it's funny, but when we were smaller, I'd hear people say this stuff that I'm saying, and it kind of sounded. It sounds so much easier than it is. But like, as we started building our corporate team,
Yeah.
for the first 10 years of Van Leeuwen, the corporate team was myself, my brother Peter, and my best friend Laura, the three co-founders. We had a bookkeeper, Allison, who's still with us, who also managed every one of our stores and trucks at some point. And that was it. So then we said, okay, we need some really good operators, who've done things that we haven't done. And it took us a lot of tries.
Yeah.
It took us a lot of tries to find the right person.
Well, that's what I was going to ask you. Was like, especially when you were kind of coming out of sort of your embryonic stage, like finding those first professional operators, like that. I mean, that was going to be my question, and you just kind of answered it. I mean, like, how hard is it for you to find those people to like come in? And was there like a game changer of one of them that you go, okay, now I see what a difference maker somebody like that can do for our business?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it takes time though. I mean, our first big hire was Corey Siegel. She came to Van Leeuwen from Sweet Green, and she started as our COO, and she's now our COO president. And she's been with us over 5 years. But again, it's a game changer eventually, but it takes time. But whenever I'm hiring somebody, and I do have to go in 2 minutes, whenever we're hiring somebody, particularly if it's a director position or above, even more particularly if it's for a new department, because as you grow, you build new departments.
Yeah.
We sit down, we say, these are the 10 or 20 or 50 things that we need done. And these things just aren't happening now.
Yeah.
So when you come on, we're going to need you to do all these things. And then we say, but what is much more important and where you're going to deliver a lot more value is the 100 things that you say to us, guys, you haven't even thought about these 100 things that you need done. So in short, what I'm saying is we want people to come on who are better than us, who are smarter than us, at least at certain things, right? Or ideally just smarter than us at everything. So I think like that's the key, is like, not because if you bring someone on and you know what you need them to do, it's kind of just micromanaging, right?
Yeah.
You could just hire like 100 really sharp assistants. So you want to bring people on who are autonomous, who can like, drive change, who can drive positive change, who can come up who can basically discover the initiatives that need to be put in place that the existing team wasn't thinking of because it's a new department or it's a place where we were lacking experience.
All right. Well, I guess we're at time.
We're at
Mr. Van
time.
Leeuwen.
Yeah.
But I just want to say, like, this was phenomenal. I mean, man, honestly, like, just kind of let you go on your riffs there, you know.
Awesome. Yeah, I hope there was more good stuff than boring stuff.
No, you're a very pleasant guy, you know.
Awesome.
Pleasant locations. You got to find pleasant locations to sell ice cream from pleasant
Yes.
guy. No. But no, honestly, man, I really appreciate it. You're fantastic. And yeah, I'll be in touch soon. But thanks for coming on, man. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Thank you, Alex.